The Wealthy Barber has returned. David Chilton is here. This book is not fiction.
No, it's not fiction. I decided to go with my own voice. I wanted to be more opinionated in this book, but also I wanted to use a lot of humor. Again, when people don't like the subject matter, you better make them laugh. And I wanted to keep it quickly moving in that people really do have attention deficit disorder. The research is supporting that. Very few people are reading text-heavy books, especially nonfiction text-heavy books. So I kept it light and lively, and I came at it from a lot of different perspectives. More psychology and more philosophy, I think, in this book, certainly than the first one. And it seems to be really resonating. It's been #1, although I think Steve Jobs' book is about to knock it off.
I think there's a good chance.
Darn it. Maybe not, though. I still beat him last week.
Did you?
Yeah, but
well,
I think this
not
week,
being a betting woman, I don't know, but Jobs is going to be tough competition.
For sure.
Manchester United, George Best.
Oh, yeah.
I love the quote in here about when George said, "I spent a lot of money on booze, birds, and fast cars. The rest I squandered."
I know, it's one of my all-time favorite financial quotes. And you know the thing about that is, I think he captures really the fact that we all want to spend as individuals. I never tell people how to spend their money. So when I sit down with somebody and help them with their personal finances, how they spend it is their business. I just need them to save some. But once they've saved it, I don't care if they go crazy partying or if they buy a hot tub, whatever, that's your decision.
Sure, whatever flips your skirt.
Exactly, you've just got a very interesting expression, but you've got to make sure that you do your saving first, and that's the key.
Sure, but so many of us try to keep up with the Joneses, and was it Quentin Crisp?
Yes.
Who said, never keep up with the Joneses, drag them down to your level. It's cheaper.
It is cheaper. It's funny, though. Juliet Shore, the big anthropologist in the States, talks about how our friends are influencing us too much now. In fact, you and I were talking off air that if you hang around people with more income than you, they naturally drag you up to their spending level, and that gets us in all kinds of difficulty. But her solution was crazy naive, if you ask me. She said, stop hanging around people that make more money than you do. Well, you're not going to start asking for people's T4 slips before you befriend them. So I think that that's not going to work. Instead, you have to learn to say, as you said in the opening, I can't afford it. When people ask you to do something, you have to be honest enough with them, but maybe more importantly, you have to be honest enough with yourself to admit it's not an admission of failure, it's an acceptance of reality. We have finite resources. We can't all do everything we want to do. And the interesting thing is, that chapter probably has resonated with people more than any other in the book. Because once they've started saying, I can't afford it, they say, you know what, it isn't that big a deal. I mean, I like saying it. In fact, now when somebody you don't like asks you to do something, you just get out of it by saying, I can't afford it. Yes, you don't insult them at all, and you avoid them, so it's all good.
Sure. However, there is this other theory, die broke, you only live once, go for it, let the world unfold. If I live in a bamboo shoe, who cares?
Well, unfortunately, we've embraced that theory, but we're also living to be older and older and older. So we have people who are living in the moment, and there's some truth like that has a lot of validity. The issue is, when they're becoming 60 and 65, they have almost no money left. And so they're not striking the right balance. And again, I do think you have to live in the moment and have a lot of fun, but it's all about setting aside something for the future simultaneously. And of course, avoiding heavy debt. We have retirees taking a lot of debt now. And if interest rates ever normalize and go back up to 5, 6, 7%, holy smokes, we're going to have a lot of people in trouble.
So if you had, say, $1.5 million, if you had just $1 million and you had no debt, could you retire in this country?
Be tough. I mean, you look at current interest rates right now, they're lower than the inflation rate. You'd only be spinning off, even if you withdrew 4% a year, $40,000 a year. Now, plus your Canada pension plan and everything else, you probably could retire. It all depends on what lifestyle you're shooting for, and certainly it depends on whether you have a debt load. If you're taking some of that $40,000 income plus the Canada pension and having to service debt, it'll be tighter. So I think a lot of it depends on your demands. But with $1 million, a lot of people could do some fairly good things. And you know, some of the research says you don't need as much money in retirement as people have said, as long as you can keep your costs under control and enjoy things like bridge and going for walks and all those types of things.
Like your mom and dad.
Like my mom and dad. They don't spend a lot in retirement. We don't let them. We have them on a very tight budget, Fanny. We say to them, you're not allowed to spend your own money because eventually it'll be ours.
Eventually it'll be
ours. Exactly.
How about the woman who came to you, and I can't remember who it was, but she was going to inherit 15 mil.
Yeah.
And she asked you if she should
be saving. We're married. Yeah, beautiful woman.
I bet you proposed.
Yeah, I did right away. She said no wisely.
Yeah, right.
No, I mean, obviously in her case, it made no sense to scrimp and save right now. She was about to come into 15 million within a year or two. So you don't have to be a fool about this. And I said, go ahead and do what you need to do. But too many people out there are subconsciously relying on inheritances. Remember, you might not get that money until you're 60, 65, and 70 because the eldest of your parents may live to be very, very old in this new health environment.
And you might not get it because that Leona Helmsley gave it to her dog.
Well, and you do see that. You're seeing a lot of strange bequests, but more than that, you're seeing people have to spend it on their health care late in life. You're seeing investment returns sabotage it. You may have an introduction of a wealth tax or an inheritance tax. You can't rely on that, so you've got to do some saving on your own. But if you have a chance to get an inheritance, take it immediately. Love inheritances. I'm very pro inheritance.
But what would you do with it? Say you just got 40 grand or 50 grand. You
I'd
didn't
take you
have
for dinner
rich parents.
first.
Fine. And 2 bottles of Cristal later.
Yeah, we're done.
I know.
No,
so
I mean,
what
I
would
think
you do with
paying
this?
down, I mean, you can't give a definitive answer because everybody's certain
everybody
situation
gets
is
more or
different.
less.
But I think paying off debt is one of the things you're going to see a lot of people do with their inheritances. They're going to relieve themselves of the big debt burdens they've taken up. And when you pay off your non-deductible interest, whether it's your mortgage or your car loan, it offers a pretty good after-tax rate of return. It reduces stress, it frees up cash flow, builds pride and ownership. That's not a bad starting spot. So for a lot of people that come into money through an inheritance or through anything else, paying down your debt with it's not a bad start.
Okay, so you've done that, and you still have the inheritance, some left over. Where to put it?
Well, again, you want to look
stocks,
at RSPs.
bonds,
Well, before you do that,
RRSPs.
where do you house it? Like, do you go to an RSP or TFSA? Probably, because they offer the tax shelter growth. In fact, in the case of the TFSA, it offers tax-free growth. You never pay tax.
But
on the
only
growth
how
you
much a
withdraw.
year?
Only $5,000 a year. But, you know, we've already had 3 years worth, and you can go back. So each of us now is eligible to put up to $15,000 in the TFSA. So if it's a husband-wife team inheriting the money, they use some of it to pay off debt, then they see some to catch up on their TFSAs, and then they've got that tax-free growth going forward. How do you invest it? That depends on so many things. Your risk tolerance level, your time frame, all those types of things. But I think a mixture of stocks and GICs, that type of thing, for most people is the right way to go.
And there is an age when you don't take the flyer.
I know, but it's fun. Unfortunately, 5, 6, 7 years ago in Canada, we had way too many people in their 60s and 70s invested way too aggressively. I mean, you can't give blanket advice, but I met a lot of people 73 years old that had 80 and 90% of their money in stocks. And of course, when the credit crisis hit, they don't have the luxury of waiting it out to the same extent that younger people do. Plus, the stress level it caused in their lives was huge, and they found themselves in a precarious position. I don't think you should avoid stocks entirely in retirement, but you've got to strike a little bit different balance, obviously, when you're older than when you're younger.
And if you have a self-directed RRSP, who should you let direct it? If you really don't know how, a broker, a financial planner, who?
Well, you know, the thing is there's so many good advisors out there, but there's lots of not so good ones too, and discerning the difference ahead of time is not easily done. In fact, I think it's one of the biggest challenges Canadians face. Who do you trust? Who can you turn to that will really keep your best interests in mind, that will not emphasize commissions? There are lots of people who do.
Right.
But again, how do you figure that out? I don't have a great answer to that. I've tried to give a few tips in the book, but the one thing I would drive your viewers to remind themselves is nobody cares as much about your money as you do. And as much as you love to slough off the responsibility and say, I don't understand this stuff, it's not that hard. Anybody can understand the Wealthy Barber Returns. It gives you a foundation. There's not a chapter in there that's going to go above people's heads. We have to take some responsibility for our own money.
I understand, because you say toys lose their luster. We get that. But I happen to have more taste than I have money.
You're like Diderot.
I'm like Diderot.
Well,
I'm
we
exactly
talked
like
about eating
Diderot.
out. And you know, we're both guilty of that. I eat
The
out
new
a lot 'cause I
anthem, let's
travel.
grab a bite.
Oh, it's unbelievable how much we spend at restaurants. But again, as long as you're doing that within the context of affordability, I'll tell you one of the biggest cultural changes in Canada in the last 30 years is that when you and I were young, if we did something, somebody said you want to go on a trip, we'd say, I can't do that because I did this 6 months ago. You heard that expression oftentimes. You never hear that now. People say, do you want to go for dinner? Yeah, sure. People do not develop the ability to say no. And so what they'll do is they'll overspend in one area without making the requisite cutbacks in others. It's not a problem to overspend in one area as long as you balance the scale. Most of us don't have the discipline to do that now. And of course, widely available credit allows us to give in to our weakness and go ahead and access money.
Of course.
But then the credit card balance grows, the line of credit card balance, or line of credit grows. It's not
I
good.
know, but the thoughts are real forces work here. I had to buy it. It was on sale. It was such a deal.
I know.
had
Well,
to
we
buy
can
it.
rationalize anything. As I said in the book, that's why rationalize sounds like rational lies. I mean, it really does. And we can trick ourselves into doing anything we want to. But I do think you're seeing a bit of a shift again. I think the credit crisis had a positive impact in that it scared people. And I think they're now going, holy smokes, I don't have the kind of money I need. Interest rates are low. Stock market returns can't be counted on in this heavy debt environment. I better start saving more. I better restrain my spending. And in general, in the last year, I've seen some good habits. For example, I've met a number of people who are going back to a cash-based spending system. They're actually going to the bank on a Monday and taking out $400, $500, $600, whatever it is they think they need. And they're not taking a credit card nor a debit card with them. And they're saying when the money runs out, so does the spending. That's how we used to do it. We had a forced restraint. And I think going back to that kind of thing makes imminent sense for most people.
It certainly dawns on you when you shell out a real dollar bill.
For sure, it actually
That
registers.
you're spending money.
It does. I remember in the old days, we used to write checks, and we'd actually write our balance right in our checkbook as we went. But of course, with a debit card or credit card, you don't do any of that. Absolutely.
I just wrote the checks. I didn't ever subtract.
Yeah, why bother keeping track?
Why bother keeping track?
Yeah, it just
don't
brings you down.
Want to know.
That just brings you down. No, we really do have to get back to some of those common sense habits.
Well, how about the woman who kept her credit cards in a block of ice in the freezer.
And you know what's really funny about that story? That was 10 years ago that I first heard that. And people at the time said, what a goofy, wacky lady. Why would she do that? Of course, what she was trying to do was give herself time to calm down when she got excited by buying something. So by the time she thawed out her credit cards, a day and 2 days later, she went, I really don't need that. Well, at the time, she took a lot of criticism. Now, some of the smartest people in the world, neuroeconomists, brain surgeons, are literally saying that's the smartest thing you can do. You need to introduce time between the stimulation and the actual purchase. They think what she did was extremely clever. I think it was clever.
Sure.
And more people are doing that again. As I said earlier, they're not carrying their credit cards and debit cards with them as much. I went to Vegas, I talked about in the book, with 8 women. Fantastic trip. I recommend it to everybody. And I went down there, one of the women did that all the time.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. She took only cash. And she said when the cash is gone, it's also spending.
I know you have a weakness for the A&W.
Love A&W.
Is it teen burgers?
Teen burgers are the greatest food
Double Papas?
ever invented. Oh, no, it's teen burgers and a root beer. I love it.
However, the Looney Spoon girls, one of them said to you, is that a good splurge? Is it a healthy splurge?
It's
or
the
something
greatest
like
splurge ever.
that?
Yeah, she's big time into the splurge worthy. And I said, trust me, a teen burger is splurge worthy for sure. No, the girls are doing well, by the way, the cookbook girls.
Are they
and
good?
I don't work
you
with them anymore.
published them, right?
I did, and I had such a what a great thing to fall into my life because it let me take advantage of my publishing background, but it got me off the road. So very fortunate.
Yeah, and can you say I can't afford it, or should we grab a bite?
Exactly, the first.
Darn.
Grab the bite and get somebody else to pay. Then you got the perfect combination.
Exactly, that's the Baroness or the Baron, and we're looking for them. So things may perk up. You never know.
You never know. Don't ever give up.
How delightful to see
Yeah,
you
it's good seeing
again.
you. I'll see you in 22 years.
Thank you. Yes, you will.
Thanks.
I'll still be here. I just like, I'm doing the senior show.
I don't know if I will be.
We will be. The Wealthy Barber returns. He's older. He's marginally wiser. Dave Chilton offers his unique perspectives on the world of money.